Are you struggling to run a specific HTTP request multiple times in JMeter while keeping other requests in your test plan intact? You're not alone. Today we're going to solve this common issue together. I understand how frustrating it can be when you have multiple HTTP samples in your test plan, but you only want one request to run multiple times based on a CSV dataset. It can feel overwhelming, but don't worry. We will break it down step by step. Here's the specific question we're addressing today. One user asked how to run a single HTTP request multiple times using a CSV dataset in JMeter, while ensuring that the other HTTP requests run only once after the iterations are complete. Sound familiar? Let's dive into the solution. To understand this better, we need to know how JMeter handles test plans and iterations. When you use a CSV dataset, it allows you to parameterize your requests, but managing the flow of execution can be tricky. We'll clarify this as we go. And stick around. At the end of this video, I'll share a pro tip that will make your JMeter testing even more efficient. To begin, the user needs to set up a loop for the HTTP request that will run multiple times based on the CSV dataset. This can be done by adding a loop controller to the test plan. Next, the user should place the HTTP request sampler inside the loop controller. This ensures that the request will execute for each entry in the CSV dataset. Now the user needs to configure the CSV dataset config element. This will allow JMeter to read the data from the CSV file for each iteration of the loop. After setting up the loop and CSV configuration, the user can add the remaining HTTP requests outside of the loop controller. These requests will run only once after the loop completes. Finally, the user should run the test plan to verify that the first HTTP request runs multiple times with the CSV data, followed by the other requests. This can be done by clicking the Start button. Fun fact, did you know that JMeter was originally designed for testing web applications? Now, it's a powerful tool for performance testing across various protocols. Now, let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach to running a specific HTTP request multiple times in JMeter is to use the loop controller. This allows you to specify how many times you want the request to be executed. Now let's see a response from a different user. An alternative approach to running a specific HTTP request multiple times in JMeter involves using a loop controller. First, create a thread group, and then add a loop controller within it. Inside the loop controller, place the particular request you want to run repeatedly. After that, add the other requests outside the loop controller. This setup allows the specified request to execute for each entry in your CSV dataset before moving on to the other requests. To configure the CSV dataset, add it as a config element and specify the path to your data file, like accounts.csv. Ensure the loop count in the loop controller matches the number of records in your CSV file. If your CSV has headers, the variables will be automatically assigned based on those headers. If not, you need to manually define the variable names in the configuration. Let's check out another perspective from a different user. An alternative approach to running a specific HTTP request multiple times in JMeter involves using the CSV dataset config and controllers. First, configure your CSV dataset config with a reference name, ensuring recycling and stopping threads on EOF are set to false. Next, place the CSV dataset config under a while controller. In the condition input, use a JavaScript expression to check if there are more entries in the CSV file. Then, add an if controller under the while controller with a similar condition. Finally, place your first request as a child of the if controller. This setup allows JMeter to loop through the CSV entries and execute the first request multiple times before proceeding to the other requests. For more detailed information, refer to the chapter on reading values from the CSV in the Using the While controller in JMeter article. Let's take a look at another answer from another user. An alternative approach suggested by a user is to simplify your setup by using just one variable. They mention that you don't need to use if and while controllers for this task. Here's the pro tip I promised. Always keep your CSV files organized and well-structured. This will save you time and headaches when running tests in JMeter. And there you have it. You can now run a specific HTTP request multiple times in JMeter using a CSV dataset while keeping your other requests intact. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks.